I suppose for me, in a few moments, can I say I remember so well this historic day when both John Hume and David Trimble both received the Nobel Peace Prize, and it reflected, I think, for everybody that was involved and everybody who was interested in the peace process across the island of Ireland and across the world, that this was an honour that was highly respected by the Nobel Committee to give these two great men this honour. I just want to say a few words about the role of both of them and my reflections of it. I was lucky enough to know John from the early 70s, but I think when we reflect back on what he did from the late 1960s and the effort and the commitment, the dedication, the time, the sacrifice that he put into trying to get us through the civil rights days, get us through the terrible days of the 70s into all of the problems of the 80s, working towards the Sunningdale in the 70s, Anglo-Irish agreement in the 80s, and keeping up that pressure all of the time. I suppose for the Nobel Peace Prize, as it was reflected by themselves at that time, if you look in the Humes-Adams talks, if you look at the multi-party talks of 91, 92, I always said that they were very important discussions because perhaps they didn't come out with solutions. John Wilson as Tánaiste was the leader on the Irish side at that time in both the Charles Haughey government and then into the Albert Reynolds government. But I think the big thing that they did lead to the effort that John had made in drafting so much of the work that went ultimately into the Downing Street Declaration. And as we're almost only days away from the Downing Street Declaration, a lot of John's work and a lot of John's effort went into that document. I always remember one of the last lines that went into the Downing Street Declaration was from John, and he had contributed so many paragraphs and so much thought to some of the others. But one of his last lines was in that it was the obligation of those of us who wanted to see a unified Ireland, and that we must convince the others. And that was one of the last amendments I remember Albert Reynolds putting into that document. But that Downing Street Declaration, which had come from the Hume-Adams talks, would come through so much of John's thought, then led on to the ceasefires of 94, to the disappointments of the Patrick Mayhew Washington Tree Clause of 95, to the breakdown of the ceasefires in February 96, and then on in to where we got to in 97 and 98. And I think as we look back on that period, I think we have to say that it was that determination of John, of his foresight throughout, his determination, and is all the time developing a strategy. That was the huge part. Now, if I have in a few words that I've left to say about David Trimble, I mean, from the time I started dealing with David in 95, 96, and into the start of the talks, I think he made that really brave move in September 97, not to pull out of the talks when the pressure was on him at that time by the DUP. And we would have, our whole efforts would have been gone in that autumn and winter, spring of 97, 98, if it was not for David staying in with Davy Adams and staying in with Gary McMichael and staying in with Davy Irvine. But that key moment was, I think, a huge pivotal part of what we call our peace process. And again, his recommending support on Good Friday of 1998, when the pressure was on him, when some of his people were opposed, when some were pulling out, and when he called those talks after all the effort that had gone in for months, and particularly those last weeks, that he again recommended support. And I suppose, again, we're almost on the 24th anniversary in December 1999, when we set up the structures and the North-South bodies, and we had that famous day in Armagh. Again, even though we hadn't got decommissioning, that David went with commencing those talks, which was a big fear at the time. Maybe people brush over that nowadays, but that was a big fear that we would not get the institutions set up. And if we didn't get them set up at that stage, in spite of all the difficulties since, I think we might have never have got anywhere. So I also want to say about David, from the, so much that we achieved in the support that David gave for the families after Oma, when again we could have run into a difficulty. So I think for that unwavering support, even when he got unstuck in politics and pulled out, that he stayed with the Good Friday Agreement. So on this day, to Tim Atwood and to everybody else involved, can I give my acknowledgement to the great people of John Hume and David Trimble, as we remember this important anniversary of the day they received the Nobel Peace Prize. And thank you for allowing me to make this contribution. Thank you, Tim, and thank you to everybody else there.